I'm gonna call roll call. Richard Black.
Here.
Janet Miller-Schmidt.
Here.
Peter Beasley.
Here.
Drain Parmley.
Here.
Marilyn Rodman.
Here.
Adam Michelle Russell, yes. And Mary Jane Flowers has submitted a resignation, so she will no longer be with us. All right. We're gonna move to the approval of previous meeting minutes. For July the 6th, you've had this in your packet. I need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Okay, I need a second.
Second.
Second heard. Any discussion? All those in favor, aye? All right, motion approved. Staff and community reports. Staff approved plat reports. I see there's none. So that means we're gonna move over to Earl, building inspector's report.
Don't really have a formal report. You had asked me about the R3 that we've been dealing with. I do have the paperwork of the old ordinance, which first part of that ordinance, a part of it said use is permitted, any use permitted without review in the R1 low density residential district and the R2 medium density residential district with the same restrictions applying. And in my opinion, that's something we might consider changing our zoning ordinance to include. Now, I know there's probably some ramifications that Garrett's may find with the existing ordinance, that some of that might need to be changed, but I think the main part of that needs to be that those R3 areas can be looked at, and you may not do all of them the same way, but some of those areas, I think, need to be made where they can be single-family residential, either in a modular home or a single-family residence in that particular area. Outside of that, I'll answer any questions you might have on anything, if I can.
But when you say that, who would be the person reviewing it? Because something else was mentioned to us recently per council, saying it would be the council reviewing it, and we don't want to do that.
The only people that review anything is the planning commission, as far as that goes.
Yeah, well, and then something came up, and I said, no, I don't want it to leave it to that discretion, because they should not be reviewing certain things, but would that come back to you for that recommendation?
No,
Or would it be?
it would come to the planning
to the planning
commission.
commission.
There's certain other areas in your zoning ordinance even that have conditions that are upon review can be done. And the review means it comes to the planning commission for review.
Well, I just wanted clarification, what that condition would be, and who would be the ones reviewing it, so
Well,
it would be the planning commission.
Typically that is true, and there's several, if you look through your zoning ordinance, there's places in there where they have uses, permitted uses, and then they have certain other permitted uses that are on review, which means they come to the planning commission before they're a certain, permitted use.
All right, so the process would be the same as like a rezoning or any of that? Would that still follow that same process?
It would, but what you'd have to do, you'd have to recommend to the city council that they change the ordinance, and Gary would need to write something up to make that new review the ordinance. He'd have to write something up that you would approve, and you would recommend that to the city council, and then they would have to have approved for 2 readings, just like you do for any ordinance.
Just like for anything?
And probably, I'm not sure there'd be a public hearing involved, but there's two readings that the city council have to do.
And you
And
feel,
once they do that, then it's part of their work.
strongly about this?
Well, I get calls and I have to tell people that they can't buy it to put a single family residence on, because R3 now is typically designated to multifamily, on those type structures, and I think, and you can look at the zoning map, and I think maybe Gary's gonna show us that tonight, all the areas in Monteagle that have been zoned R3. And it just doesn't ring a bell to me to have all those areas just designated as multifamily.
Right.
But why would you not want the single dwelling in a multifamily use? I don't understand the logic there. Where's the logic that you couldn't have both of those in an R3?
Well, I mean, really know the logic involved, I just know what the zoning, what the regs are.
So there's
A lot
nothing.
of those regs, I don't see any logic in at all. If you
Well,
go-
that's, you know, I
see
didn't
where I'm
know.
going with that, but that's just the way they are. And, I would think, you know, if you've got a single family residence and you understand that there could be a townhouse or a multifamily there next to you and you don't mind that, go for it.
As long as you know definition of the beginning.
If you know it could be that way.
Now, did you mention that it was in there before, and it was taken out with the most
It
recent?
was, when the new ordinance came out, and of course, it was adopted in 2018 of the original, I think. When the new ordinance came out, then that changed for some crazy reason. And this is the old ones. I've got the old ones. And this was the first part of it, just like I read it off to you. It says any use that can be in a review, without review, in R1 low density residential, is a use permitted.
Okay.
And right now, it's not.
Commissioners, do you want to direct Garrett to explore that for us for next meeting?
I really think he's aren't you gonna show us the map or something, wasn't that part of the?
I've got the map to review.
He's got the map up there, you know, and it's something y'all might wanna look at. And it could be that you might not wanna do it in all the areas there.
Sure, I mean, I
Some
can
of them you
definitely-
might wanna leave it just like it is, but they should be some, maybe that you might wanna change it to where you can put single family residential in.
Okay. Gotcha,
Be
thank
my
you.
thoughts. So any other questions?
Well, Earl, that was easy.
Well, I do have one question. If you're gonna change it, why wouldn't you change it across the board with that condition and review, giving the option, if a person knows, if I know that there could be a condo built beside me or a townhouse, when I buy that property, what would be the problem? So if I'm trying to be consistent here, so why wouldn't you just change it across the board based upon review?
Well, I think maybe I'm not making myself very clear or something. What I think, that it shouldn't be a use on review. It should be part of the main deal.
Okay.
You know, when somebody calls me and they say, look, can I put a house on here? I say, I don't know. You're gonna have to go to the planning commission. It's a use on review.
Okay.
So adding
That's
single
where I'm going with
family.
that, and then
Just so you
maybe I will, maybe I won't.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you, Earl.
No, understand.
Okay, any other questions for Earl? Alrighty, sir. Old business, zoning ordinance amendment.
Sure. And just for the record, I'll take that as a request to
Yes.
draft up
Yes.
some sort of language to incorporate single-family houses in R1, 2, and 3, or just a couple different examples to present for the planning commission next month.
Yes.
So, onto this agenda item, we're looking at amending the zoning ordinance, specifically section 1105 pertaining to non-conforming uses. And it was recommended to essentially amend this section to allow for existing non-conforming single-family dwellings in C1 and C2 zones to either be constructed and used before, and reconstructing, meaning actually demolishing the house, building as before, adding on as an addition, building accessory uses or structures on the same property, which is currently prohibited. So the ordinance that you have in front of you actually allows that, and added in the section, or it's included in here, it was included last month as well. So specifically, this subsection is solely intended for properties that are in full compliance and have been for the past 2 years. That way you know they're law-abiding citizens, and you know that they're gonna do what they say they're gonna do. So that comes to you in the form of a motion, whether you choose to move forward.
Commissioners, any questions on that?
What is that ordinance number? It's a recommendation, Carolina.
It's a recommendation, it's in our packet.
Right here. I've got it. We would have to do it, we don't assign, we don't remember.
And that would address the Maxwell situation that we are still in, is that correct?
Correct.
Any other things that could possibly go wrong with that?
The only thing that comes to is the section 1207C addressing the 5 different criteria for amending the zoning ordinance. Basically stating that there's no general plan for the area. This doesn't violate any legal ground for zoning provisions. The overwhelming public good or welfare justifies any adverse effects upon adjoining or adjacent property owners, and that no one property owner or small group of property owners will benefit materially from change to the detriment of the general public.
Okay.
That's the only thing that comes to my mind. But again, this will be a recommendation to Board of Mayor and Aldermen. It'll have to be read there. It'll have to be passed by them twice and have a public hearing for it to be finalized.
Okay, then I'm gonna move, I need a motion to recommend this.
I'll make a motion to recommend.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All those in favor? And opposed? Okay, all right, we'll move on with that. All right, new business, I'm gonna kind of mix it up just real quick. G. Nixon, if you can come on up real quick. Let's just get yours out of the way. It was one lot away from not having, just to get this staff approved, right?
Only thing I didn't get signed was the gas, and the city put the gas in the building, they sold the gas.
Oh, they've already got gas.
They've already got gas in it.
So there's 6 copies here.
Right. It's just gotta be signed. Yeah, it's just gotta be signed.
Let's keep these, how's that?
The signature, right. Yeah, this is secretary. Were there any issues with this?
No, there were, and he had all the revisions corrected and revised and recommended approval for.
Okay, commissioners?
What exactly are we doing here?
That's a piece of property, there's 2 blue buildings and one behind, and I'm subdividing that property because I've already one track, and I'm subdividing.
Okay.
That road coming out of what my.
2 different tracks.
It's 2 different tracks of subdivision, and because it's the third one, because the road itself is being retained by the flea market, that makes it 3 lots. Otherwise, it would have just been staff approved.
So are you making a recommendation, everything's right on this?
Right, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay,
I'll second.
okay, second, any discussion? All those in favor? All right, Janet, here's for a signature.
Okay.
You're very welcome. All right, I'm gonna move up to Lakeside, since you've been up here many, many times, and we just really want this to go one way or another to help you out.
All right. I'm here from your mom, and,
Actually, if you could take this.
podium.
Yeah.
We're here, and I want to say this first off. Don't think I'm throwing the gauntlet down, because I'm not. I think at bottom, there's a misunderstanding here, and I'll let him,
Can you talk in the microphone?
Pardon me?
Can you talk in the microphone?
Okay. We're here because he was stopped in doing what he thought was complying with a plat that was approved about a year ago. And from my standpoint, or my perspective, the issue here is the question, the only thing that's ambiguous about the approval of the plat was the construction of a fence. Now, the fence on the plat that was designated is designated as a security fence, which was not actually. It was designated as a security fence, which would have been acceptable in the zone that he has, which is C2. the plat calls for a privacy fence, which is not actually defined in the zoning ordinance. But I think Mr. Haynes, as he points out, it's a lot like, another word that I can't think of right now, that is defined in it, and I somewhat agree with that, or probably pretty much agree with it. When Mr. Ojeda first came to me, I thought I thought the type of fence he was talking about putting up was a type of fence that would have satisfied the security fence requirement for his zone, but that's not exactly what was approved on the plat. And I thought it was going to be chain link with a vinyl or a plastic coating. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about a fence that is almost opaque, which would satisfy the definition, the more rigid definition, or the definition that has to do with opacity of, see if I can figure out what it's called here in the, what's the word? Well, I can't think of what it is, but it's Mr. Yeah, screening fence. Yeah, screening fence. As far as I can tell, that's the only issue that was not approved on the plat after about his third submission a year ago, which does bear a signature of the secretary of this commission. And to the extent that the city wants to deviate from that to a reasonable degree, I think he wants to make peace with the city, but he wants to get his project completed as well. And so we're kind of here asking for, what it takes to make the city happy.
All right, then
Is that-
all right, go ahead.
Is that, you have anything to add to that?
No, I'm just trying to wrap my project up and
Christian, and we want that to happen for you, I guarantee it. So let's try to make this happen. All right, Garrett, what was our, the background?
So I'm kind of here to give a background of, as best as I can recall, and pulling from agendas and meeting minutes and firsthand account of being at these meetings. So this site plan was originally submitted in February of 2020. It was submitted and it was actually past the deadline for the April Planning Commission. And so Mr. Ojeda came to the April Planning Commission. It's already been reviewed, so he came and tried to see if the Planning Commission would approve it at that time. It wasn't on the agenda. So the Planning Commission told him, you're gonna have to come to the actual Planning Commission that was scheduled for in April. So he came back before the Planning Commission in April, and there are still requirements that need to be met on this site plan. And Mr. Ojeda requested variances at that time, and the Planning Commission told him that the BZA would be the proper body for that, for granting variances that he's requesting. So he came before the BZA, and ultimately, this was a couple months later in June, the Board of Zoning Appeals, who at the time was the same body as the Planning Commission, granted 2 out of the 3 requested variances. Mr. Ojeda requested a 10-foot street yard variance, or a 5-foot street yard, when a 10-foot street yard is required. That was actually denied by the Board of Zoning Appeals. Mr. Ojeda requested 13 parking spaces be allowed when 25 were required. That was approved. And in his request for a reduced street yard, he requested that the overall percentage of 20% that's required be reduced down to 12%. That was approved. It just had to be shown on the site plan. So in June, that's what was approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals. He came back in July, showed that on the site plan, and that's what was approved. So it was approved in July of 2020. But as I didn't catch your name, I'm sorry.
Paul Cross.
Paul Cross. Thanks. As Mr. Cross mentioned, on the site plan, it actually specifies that a privacy fence is to be installed. As I've told everyone here in front of the planning commission and the applicant, privacy fence is not one of the 4 fencing classifications of a pool fence, residential fence, security fence, or a screening fence. The way I interpreted a privacy fence, and it was discussed last year, is that a privacy fence would be marginally opaque. Essentially, couldn't see through it. It was discussed, I remember firsthand account at the meeting, that a wooden fencing material was discussed, and I can't say whether or not that was agreed upon by the Board of Zoning Appeals, because that wasn't in the meeting minutes.
I'm talking about the board said, well,
That was not in the meeting minutes of the Board of Zoning Appeals, therefore I can't specify what exactly was approved. But what I'd like to hopefully clarify a little bit is that when I spoke with Mr. Ojeda after this issue came up again, is that a security fence is a permitted fence for this specific use. The only thing that is required is if there are, I apologize, let me dig through my notes here. Essentially, if there's inoperable vehicles behind that fence, a screening fence will be required. That's under the section in the land use section in the zoning ordinance for service centers. So Earl and I spoke about this, and we both agreed, as soon as there is an inoperable vehicle behind that fence, a screening fence will be required at that time, and anything built will have to be torn down and be built as a screening fence. Therefore, I recommended to Mr. Ojeda that he go ahead and build a fence using a wooden material, as that's permitted both under a security fence and a screening fence per our current zoning ordinance. That's what I recommended. That's what I understood was to be built, and that doesn't seem to be the case as we're here talking about this. So in 2021, the site plan was represented, saying it was showing a different landscaping plan, changing it from what was approved in 2020. It's showing different landscape planners. I think they were knockout roses, if I recall correctly. He brought that back in July last month. Sam and I both recommended that he resubmit a site plan for review, and therefore he did so. I reviewed it, and I found it in detail. I reviewed a site plan in detail and basically found that landscape screening is required between adjacently zoned C3 properties. Mr. Ojeda's property is zoned C3 on all sides, therefore landscape screening is required. Per the current regulations, like I said, here's the language. Kristen may use a chain link fence as long as there are no damaged, wrecked, undrivable, inoperable, or salvaged vehicle used for parts are behind that fence or located on the property. That's what the current ordinance says. If any of the aforementioned cars are located on the property, a screening fence will be required. So I sent my review to Christian. I might have sent to Mr. Childers as well, I don't recall. But I spoke with Mr. Ojeda after that, and the site plan was withdrawn. That's really where we are to date. So really, I'm not exactly what it will take to get it approved, whether that's a resubmittal of site plan abiding by the current regulations. Like I said, a chain link fence, security fence would be permitted, but it would require landscape screening on all sides.
can I respond very briefly? The definition of screening fences does not require complete opacity. It says, in general, screening fences required by, screening fences required by this ordinance shall have minimal opacity. Very little or no visibility. Now, he's already spent $10,000 on fencing materials that he thinks satisfy the requirement. And he's got a picture that we can pass around to show what he's talking about in terms of what this will look like as a finished product. If y'all want to take a look at it.
Is it a chain link fence?
It's a chain link fence, but it's covered mostly with well, you'll see when it comes through. And I should note that I have a little bit of a disagreement with one issue. The reason that there was a resubmission of a plan that took place, the last resubmission he's talking about is, I think his name escapes me right now, in charge of the water issues in Monteagle had Keith Gillen, had, when the approved plat had been submitted, the idea was that permanent plants would be built in what Mr. Garrett is calling the yard something.
Street yard.
Yeah, street yard. And Mr. Gillum made the comment that that could be problematic as to one of the water lines in there that came close. Actually, I don't think it's that close, but nevertheless, as an accommodation, Mr. Ojeda here suggested as an alternative some above ground plants that were planters. But apparently that idea was shot down as well. I'm not sure exactly by who, but that was just a proposal on his part to satisfy any concerns that might be there. But we're certainly willing to comply with the approved plat, and respectfully, I submit that this fence he's talking about, which seems to be the only point of contention right now, does comply.
Did we not accept the above ground landscaping?
No.
No, that was presented in
here's-
July, and it wasn't on the agenda, so we
This
just
is in your packet.
Okay.
They didn't accept.
I didn't recall
submitted it
that.
at the July planning commission meeting. No.
But he can't really do any other landscaping.
Yeah, he can.
I mean, he's a pavement and
But we
highway,
still
or
gotta
pavement
go all the way
road.
around it, what he's saying. We have to be all the way around it, so here it says because of the secret.
Well, I understand that, but we can't ask him to dig up pavement, plant trees.
So that's essentially what was done, what was submitted on the, 2020 site plan was, just some small trees that would be planted. They are, in perfect proximity to the road, and, asphalt will have to be removed in order for us to plant it. Now in 2020, the screening shrubbery was not a requirement, that was just recently added. So, if we go by our plan that was approved on 2020, shrubbery around the perimeter of the building is not a requirement. What I've had presented, I was here last month on the meeting, and what I had, talked to you guys about was putting those, wooden planters above ground, so they wouldn't interfere with any utility lines or whatever. However, he mentioned in his review that he would not recommend that, therefore you guys probably would not accept it. You shed or beautify the town in a sense, I guess. So therefore, I withdrew my site plan. He also added a bunch of changes that would have to bring my current site plan up to code, to the new, it's been recently rezoned. So he added a lot of changes to that, so that's the reason I withdrew my site plan, because there's no way we can comply with those now. So, essentially, we got, a couple of options. We can continue with the approved landscaping plan, or do the wooden planters, as he said, he would not recommend. But the really main issue that we're trying to, come to an agreement on is really the fence, because like I said, when we left here down Eaton on July 7th of 2020, it was under, and, John Childers is the surveyor, unfortunately he's not here, but when we left on Eaton, we thought that the fence that I purchased was agreed on, up until, we were stopped a couple months ago.
What about the setback where that fence has now been put, because I know there was no variance for a setback for the road, it says here it was denied. Is the setback met for the major, on the road there?
Well, we never got really down that road. The issue was, my understanding now, and I certainly want to help him any way that we can. And my understanding that if you've got wrecked vehicles behind that fence, it has to be a screening fence. It can't be a privacy, or it's gotta be one that you can get a screening fence. And I don't have the code, don't have really with me, but I believe the definition of a screening fence
does.
Has to be wood.
For a security fence, it could be.
Do what?
For a security fence, it can be chain link, for a screening fence, it's not.
Well, don't we want a screening fence where there's gonna be vehicles behind it
That's the planning commission, that's the decision the planning commission will have to make, so if they
and that's the
believe.
problem that we have.
So Christian, real quick, cause I've been trying to wrap my head around every ordinance to find a way around this, I'm telling you. Will you have damaged, wrecked, undrivable, and inoperable vehicles or salvage vehicles outside?
So, the inoperable, no, salvage and wrecked, salvage, no, as well, wrecked, obviously that's for a body shop, so there will be wrecked vehicles, however, they will not be left outside throughout the night. That was really one of the biggest reasons we started this new building, is so that we can put them all inside.
Cause it says if you contain them indoors,
Indoors, it's okay.
then
right?
it's okay.
And so far, for the past 4 or 5 years, really, that's what we've done, is just kept them inside.
So am I correct, you do not need a screening fence if everything is inside?
Right, I'm just 100% clear this, if anybody sees wrecked vehicles outside of the property that require screening fence, that'll be the defining factor.
So wouldn't it be just as easy to go ahead and put the fence up and then come back and put a wooden fence on the outside of it? You've got your chain link for security, but then you've got a wooden fence for appearance on that front side. I mean, I'd much rather look at a wooden fence than a green chain link. You know what I mean?
Was this in the minutes, was this presented to them?
No, I haven't seen that.
No, that's
We-
pretty much
we-
all you should do.
I
We
mean,
can.
you could go ahead and put your chain link fence up for security, right? And then you could put a wall or a wooden fence up on the outside of that chain link fence so that you can't see. Would that not cure it?
It'd be twice the expense.
I may be wrong, and I do agree with what Mr. Gary says. The last sentence of the definition of the fence, continue to not be able to screen the fence, does say that, chain link fences are prohibited. I took that to mean that they were not opaque enough. And certainly with this, that's been presented, that comes pretty close to being opaque. And again, the definition does not require complete 100% opacity.
That's just your opinion of what that means?
That's what I thought when I read it, yes.
I feel like I have an option for making everyone happy. So the zoning ordinance does allow for an alternate landscaping plan. Essentially, we understand that you're claiming, and we can have a fact check, that the water utility line is running under the proposed landscaping that was approved in 2020. I recommend having a site plan drawn up showing an alternate landscaping plan, because that's one of the main issues. The second issue being screening fence. But this new revised site plan will show exactly what the screen or the fence is going to be, the materials to be made out of, the height it's going to have, and the actual landscaping plan to be proposed that would be an alternate from.
Would you honor that as, the one, so that we can proceed with this as soon as, so all right, it's C3 now. Would you review it as a C1, as it is more or less a revision rather than a resubmission?
It's currently C3.
That's where we run into issues.
So that's where it would more than likely compound with some sort of variance request from the board of zoning appeals. It seems like there is some hardship with that water utility line going through where the landscaping would be.
Well, what isn't the burden of coming forward and saying there's something wrong with the plan as originally improved? Isn't that on the city and not on him?
The burden of proof.
Yes. The burden of coming forward with it. It's been approved. If the city now wants to say that wasn't approved or shouldn't have been approved, isn't it their responsibility to come forward with something with an alternative rather than putting the responsibility on him?
That sounds like a question for Sam Miller,
Yeah,
but I don't think
Yeah, our
so.
attorney's not here. We can asked our attorney, Pop, you wanna see that question, if you, I mean, that's something we discussed with all those minutes. So,
Well,
But I mean, if the site plan was approved and then it comes to light that there's a water utility line shown through there, that the survey hasn't guaranteed, that's an unforeseen, that's an unexpected obstacle.
well, I'm just,
I'm not a lawyer.
I'm not trying to throw the gauntlet down, but on the other hand, you know, he's been trying to get this built for a year. And, my suggestion to him is that, or my suggestion to everybody in the room is, that the original, proposal he be permitted to go forward with it, and if he can, I think Dwayne has a good suggestion. I don't know what the expense is and so forth, and whether he's gonna take advantage of it or not. But I think it's been flushed out in this conversation, what the regulations require and what everybody's interpretation is as far as the fence is concerned. And he can consider his options. But it sounds like, except for this issue about, and I think it's already been approved, about these, about the trees being outside, 5 feet outside, which was also approved, based on the signed plat, that he's ready to go forward and do the best he can complying with the fence requirement.
Well, he's already bought the fence. That's already.
He bought the chain link
You've already
fence.
halfway got it put up, and you can use that for security, correct? Now, for aesthetics, you need something that you can't see through.
Either
Now,
that'll
I'm
keep,
not too game on going down the road looking at that big green fence.
either that'll keep,
The landscape may have gone out the exterior of
Right.
the fence.
Right.
And that's where I said that the planters that we proposed in July would not meet the requirement for the screening that's required on the outside of the fence, because it's C3 against C3.
So he could put like a wooden fence up on the outside of that chain link and put planter boxes out there, because there's no way he could.
That's what I'm saying, he can have an alternate landscape plan, he can submit whatever he wants to, and then we can discuss at that point in time if that
Right.
meets the intent purpose of landscaping fencing requirements.
Christian, you've got one side here that you can put trees and then the back, right? It's not, and you're talking about just where the pavement's at. And of course, we don't have anything from the utility people, but there's not utilities running down this side and behind it is there.
He can't do anything behind it because he's right up next to the woods.
Well, he's gotta put something up, if it's a C3 all the way around, it's what it is.
Well,
Did you
that's
guys-
existing vegetation.
I mean, that's just stay the way it is, the back.
You can use
Yeah,
existing
so,
vegetation.
but the side that's closest to the funeral home could
It's
have,
got trees.
that'll have the landscaping on it, because that's not pavement, I mean, that's.
The
it's
side,
open.
beside the funeral is pavement, that's what we're using as our parking lot. That's our parking lot right there.
But there's trees.
But there's
between
trees
the two.
there.
There's trees between them, but they belong to the funeral home.
So you would have to put your landscaping on that side, which you could put, right?
Well,
You just have to dig it up. I mean, that's not, he's talking about the reason you couldn't dig it up is because utility line. It had nothing to do with the pavement.
well, the only thing, the site plan, when we submitted it, the landscaping that we, suggested to put up was really for it to be visual to the public. If we put it on the side, so I guess what you're saying is, instead of putting the landscaping on the front, like
I
we're.
think you have to do it all the way around. According to this, I'm reading, and this is the minutes that I brought you, Paul, it said it was a 20% variance I was given for landscaping period, correct? Is that not?
20% landscape on the front side is required, it was reduced down to 12%.
So there was nothing on the two sides?
There was nothing required at the time.
There was no landscaping required in C3 at that time?
There was
It
one
wasn't
at a
shown on the
time.
site plan,
It
but
was.
it got approved that way.
Sam hasn't looked at the site plan, I mean, as far as from the city's perspective. I can't, a lot of that's not.
I'm sorry, what site plan are we talking about?
The site plan that you're discussing here, that they, portions of it was approved last July, but we have no minutes you saying to reflect that, correct?
Fence
Well,
interior.
I've got, I'm passing this around, this is Bearsville.
I understand what you've got, Paul, but what I'm saying, since we have an attorney that's already dealing with a lot of issues that may have been approved, that should have been approved, we would like for him to review that site plan too before, from the city's perspective, because we've got enough issues that we need to deal with. you're not willing to make a recommendation based upon what we have now without Sam looking at it.
A recommendation on what subject? I'm not totally following.
Us moving forward with this site plan, the way that it's been approved last July. Cause you're telling me that was approved, portions of that was approved last July, correct?
Well, I'm assuming everything on this plan, it's got the signature of the secretary of this board on it.
Correct.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
You also have to acknowledge that that's showing a 5-foot street yard, not a lot. You have to acknowledge that that's showing a 5-foot street yard, which the variance was not granted for.
Yeah, it says it wasn't granted here. So, and these are actually minutes that
So
reflect this.
realistically, that site plan should be
So
revised.
which controls?
Well, I'm not an attorney. You know, you are, and Sam Elliott is, or, you know, we have another attorney that addresses. We're not trying to make it hard on anybody, but we don't want to mess up anymore on either side, on the town or on the business, but we've got to make sure we do it right. So, like you say, there's things reflected here that doesn't match the minutes that you have, so.
So that's what I was suggesting, resubmitting a site plan, showing an alternate landscaping plan. That sounds like it's not gonna be what's shown on that site plan. It's not gonna be what was recently submitted with the planners. If there's some variation from the requirements or the regulations, then alternate landscape would be your only other option. Which it seems to be very vague. If you read section 710, it allows for, I can read it directly. It states that the town of Monteagle recognizes that existing site conditions or the nature of proposed development may make it impractical or impossible to comply with strict landscaping provisions of this ordinance. In such cases, the planning commission is authorized to approve an alternate landscaping plan provided that the proposed arrangement completes the building facade, enhances the public view shed, and advances the goals of section 701. The planning commission may impose conditions it deems necessary when approving alternate landscaping plans to ensure the spirit and intent of this ordinance is fulfilled. Alternate plans shall be submitted in accordance with this section. So it leaves it fairly open to interpretation by the planning commission and essentially negotiating with the developer to come to some sort of agreement as long as it meets the intent and purpose of section 701. That's what I'm saying, a revised site plan showing that and addressing the fencing material so we can get that clarified as well.
Well, I understand the fencing material issue.
So, I mean, that's my recommendation, as that seems like the mechanism and the tool to make both parties happy.
Well, see, I think he's constrained by the dimensions of the lot, and of course, that's the basis for the dropping of the 20% to vegetation to 12%.
And that's what I'm saying, some sort of.
And I don't know what else there's gonna be in terms of, the proposal to plant bushes or trees or whatever they are along the front. And so I'm assuming that this was submitted initially on the grounds that the appropriate variances would probably be granted, so that, because it really doesn't have anywhere else to go.
Well, this document says they were denied.
Right, so you're saying he assumed variance.
No, I'm talking about from a geographical standpoint, he doesn't have much in the way of options. So I don't know if he's gonna be able to produce anything that's gonna be any more reasonable. I don't know what,
Sure, what I'm telling you is the planning commission can't grant those types of requests, that's the board's zoning appeals, and the tool would be a variance request.
So where does that leave him? He has
Well,
to
see,
move
leave
the side.
him in limbo for I don't know how much longer.
Right. So we know the road beside it, he can put planter boxes in, can he or can he not?
Which road?
The side road, not the Mrpc in front, the side road between him and High Point. What does he have to do on that side of his property?
The property is not
Landscape
adjacent to
screening. The C3 requires landscape screening.
So he's gonna have to dig the pavement up and plant something.
No, that can be determined, is what he's saying.
Or submit an
But he
alternate
needs to
landscape
know
plan.
so he can figure out a site plan. He needs to know what he has, what he can do, what he can't do. Can he do planter boxes right on that side, or does he have to dig pavement up and plant?
Per the current ordinance, that would not be permitted. He would have to submit some sort of alternate landscaping plan where he essentially proposes what he's wanting to do, and then the planning commission would review, I review it, and the planning commission would review it.
So
I mean,
you're looking
assuming
at
you do
another
that next
month.
month, we get the next planning
All right.
commission.
So you're on Mrpc Street. you're pulling straight into his business. He can't landscape anything up there.
Well, that fence is too close, I think, I don't really think it comes to that.
There is no fence. I'm talking about coming in off Navy into his lot now, not the one he just built, but his body shop.
The
He
main,
can't,
right across from the post office,
yeah,
right?
he can't do anything there.
I don't know.
There's nothing, there's no room to do anything. You're right there on Navy Street. Now, the fence on the other part, on the bays that you just built, I get that. But the part going into your garage, what do you do?
The old building, so right now, we're, the only landscaping we got there is just, landscaping that was up pre-existing, but the old building it's demonstrated on there, but nothing else is shown. The new building where the fence is, that's where, that's, the new building, we got the fence around the front right now, and on the outside of that is where landscaping was proposed.
Right,
So
I
it's-
get that. I get the fence part. I'm talking about the old building.
Yeah, well, at the time when this
What's
one was approved, there was, to my understanding, there was no requirement for landscaping on that area. Just, there was just an ordinance for some landscaping, which was at the time.
I'm just trying to get you to figure out what you got to do so you can present the site plan again next month, so
Yeah.
that we can approve it or not.
Earl, in 2018, did it require landscaping all around at that time? So this was a requirement, so that hasn't changed, so that was part of it, it was just reduced by 20%.
I get that. I get all that. He's just got to have landscaping down the side road of the old building. I don't see where you can do anything out in front of the old building. Work on the fence and landscape it. It can be a chain link fence and then the security, or the, screen. I get that. Would that be sufficient for a new site plan?
I think anything we're discussing now, any changes require a new site plan.
You can't do anything in the back, so I'm just saying, would that be sufficient for a new site plan? The side of the side road and the fencing in front of the new building.
So they didn't require landscaping all the way around it like it was supposed to be with the ordinance whenever this was submitted, is what you're
They
saying?
can't go all the way around.
Not to my understanding, that's the reason it's not shown or the.
Well, you could go around here and you could go around here, and this right here is too close to the road right here.
Right, you can't do anything.
But this is what was approved.
But this says it was, part of it says it was denied in here. According to
The only thing that was denied was 5 feet of street yard, everything else was approved. And I had mentioned to Mr. Crowley that, if, we can dig up 10 feet of asphalt to put the yard and, we may do that. But that's the only thing that was denied is the street yard.
This back here, it's got natural vegetation.
So that one's ready for this right here is going to be.
How can it be changed though? It's road.
This one's
Appreciate
the other fences.
Would you guys be opposed, or would you guys entertain the
Okay,
opportunity
fence,
for some sort of pre-application meeting? That way we could have
Some sort
of pre-application meeting prior to next month's planning commission.
Pre-application?
Yes, sir. So
Pre-apply with who?
Yeah, he can do that.
pre-apply with the town for
Well, that I
discussion.
understand. I'm talking about a
Hard time getting it through.
So typically, these
Well, but here's the big thing.
anybody have a meeting.
And here's one thing, for some reason, which I don't know, this is the same question. They didn't require, they didn't require
See
landscaping.
this being an option for simply plan, that way.
This is natural vegetation.
Yeah, so that one's,
That way there's some sort of
this is going to have it, the side
So
of
it doesn't just hit everybody or is
Right,
it
that was
more?
not hit.
No, but here is the
Never seen
minutes.
or seen.
Right.
That's very.
Yeah, I have to go.
Alright, here's the thing though, this was not approved, so this fence is too close, so it's gonna have to be that.
Okay, Garrett, what was your recommendation?
Sure, so having some sort of pre-application meeting, that way we don't have to worry about finalizing exactly what we expect out of him next month.
Yes.
It would be a meeting of agreeable time for
I know.
town officials, public works director, water utility director, Earl Geary, agree.
To agree upon, based upon what was approved. And
Yeah,
if
we
you
can
can get
also-
the information to Sam
Sure.
for this meeting, that way we won't be wasting anyone's time and explain it to him. If you can do that. And this, he hasn't seen this.
Okay, do you want to have Sam call me or either way?
We'll figure that out after we get it finished tonight. But anyone saying that wouldn't want to know what we're doing. Oh, we need to keep a copy of that, Paul. If you don't mind, can we keep one of those copies, or is that, that's ours?
This is on the copy I've got.
Yeah, the town has
We're
one.
talking about.
Okay, all right, just as long as we have one, baby.
And then Gary has one on file as well. For
I got a digital copy.
Yeah.
Well, you can send it to Sam, right?
Okay.
Okay.
I think I have to go on record in saying that I cannot agree that we're under an obligation to, produce another site plan on a temporary or, this year suggested, or at a regular meeting type thing. I mean, we probably will do it, but we kind of, I think to protect my position and his position, we have to say it's kind of under protest.
Well, if after this meeting happens, and our attorney looks at it, he may say we don't need one. I can't answer that question, I'm not an
Okay.
attorney. Or do you, so, I mean, what's the?
I will say any revision to a site plan, usually typically in any community requires a revised site plan to be submitted and approved by planning commission. So any deviation from the drawing that was approved, which clearly will be required, requires a revised site plan in mind.
Okay, well, that's, you know, Sam will do what y'all say to do.
So do we pull this site plan, ask for a rescission at what,
His current site plan isn't on the table. And,
it's not?
all right, it's not on the agenda for review, just.
Okay, all right, gotcha. And we will, Garrett will schedule a meeting.
If y'all are agreeable to having some sort of meeting to agree on what should be submitted in August, that way we can have a meeting to discuss what the current zoning ordinance exactly says.
See, I don't know how long it's gonna take, I don't know how long it'll take to get, the surveyor to, do something different. That surveyor I know right now is covered up, so, I don't know.
That was nothing, I will make myself available, that's my job to help you understand the ordinance.
Okay.
Mr. Gary, you will extend their occupancy for another 30 days. Do we need a motion here?
I
Yeah,
don't,
anything?
I don't believe we need a motion.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Christian, we're gonna work this out somehow, some way.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cross. All right, we're gonna move on to Mr. Dean Lay. And you know, when I was looking over this book here, I noticed that your name was on here.
The current ordinance,
Yeah. Now his, with recognition and gratitude of the efforts of those citizens who enacted the first zoning ordinance of the town of Monteagle, February 23rd, 1984. Dean Lay, Mayor.
And I might add, it was much more citizen friendly than the one you've got now.
Right on,
Good start.
right on.
And they're working on making it more citizen friendly, but
Well, while we're on that, I just, state planning, Monteagle's zoning ordinance, I'm sure was like the one you've got now, it's pulled off a shelf and it's used in several communities, and it's changed to meet the needs of each community. And the 2020 is basically the 2018 with revisions, right? But anyway, it's very difficult for people, as you've seen, whether it's with Christian or whoever, it comes up and there's issues, it delays people. And as business owners and as developers, that's a strike against everything you're trying to do. And if you look at the results of what's happening for the last 4 or 5 years, there's been mega growth everywhere in the United States, but not in Monteagle, and really not in Grundy County. But if you look at all around the surrounding area, you look at the residential growth, commercial growth, and in areas where they can, industrial growth. And if you look at our population, I don't know if the 2020 census stuff is in yet or not. I think it is, because they're talking about redistricting. But inside the city limits of Monteagle, have you had the growth inside the city limits of Monteagle that other towns have had?
We have with residential businesses, commercials beginning to grow like that, but residential, we're growing both in all the areas, that is.
Well, most of that's outside the city limits.
Not all of it. No,
Well,
the majority of it.
if it's the gated communities you're talking about, but anyway, we'll get on to that in a minute. I want to talk about housing in a minute, it's part of my thing, but, and I did want to make this, if you talk to contractors, developers, they will say it's harder to do business in the town of Monteagle than it is anywhere else they do business, not just since y'all come on board. This isn't something that you started. It's been going on for probably 10 years or longer. And you know, go out and talk to the people and see how much trouble they have getting approval. And it's difficult. And I think we need to be more user-friendly in the process, not giving them blank checks. I don't advocate that. But just like with Christian, you know, if I were Christian and I had an approved site plan signed, I would go and do whatever that site plan map shows. And then I would come back and say, we need to do the bushes and landscape ordinance, and we'll work on that. That's a separate issue, just like the truck stop thing. I think y'all approved their site plan, then they were going to come back with a landscape ordinance, which that's fine. But if a guy's got something signed off by the planning commission as a site plan, how can you tell them they can't use that?
Well, first and foremost, the variance for the 5 feet was not on the site plan.
I understand that.
That was not approved, but that was done, so.
But he has a signed site plan.
But the site plan doesn't reflect, they don't reflect what's happening there.
There's all kind of them in Monteagle that don't.
Well, I can't help those, Danny, we're just trying to fix the ones we can.
Okay, so you're gonna fix the ones you can. So down on South College Street, or West College Street, that you and I talked about before, they just go in when they did the McDonald's and the liquor store and all that. They just ceased South College, or West College Street.
Yeah, we plan on we talked about that road.
Right.
Fixing that and
So you're gonna go down and correct that boo-boo on the site plan?
That's got to be corrected, yes, it
Okay.
does.
And that's
actually,
gonna be done?
Well, I'm hoping it's done, we'll see what we can do.
Okay.
In a year, we may not be here.
Okay, good. Okay, let's get back on what I'm here for then.
But food for thought, we do have a committee that meets monthly, that is actually looking at all these ordinances and trying to correct them and make them more user-friendly for Monteagle. They've been working for 4 months now. So that is happening as we speak, but we have to also make sure that we do those.
I understand. If you got a guy that borrowed money, bought land, built a building over here, talking about Christian, and thought he was doing everything right, and now he's on a 30-day temporary use, and it's over a fence and landscaping. It's ridiculous. He should have never been able to break ground on it if that was the case. And then, you know, I know a guy named Gene Nixon that used to come and build buildings, and you just approved whatever you approved for him. He built every building he's got down there, and didn't even have a building permit.
Well, that was 30 years ago.
Right.
I can't help
But are you gonna go back and make him get a building permit?
No, we can't go back that far. I don't think the statute of limitations ran out on that, but
Okay.
we're trying to fix what we
But
can.
you see how it looks with Christians do.
Well, but we didn't stop them from being in business, we told them.
No, but it's
for
still,
being in business.
you can, the threat is there. There's an implied threat if you're on a temporary 30-day permit occupancy. That's kind of implied that, you know, if you don't come around, we're just not going to renew this.
Well, that's not true, and that's not what we're trying to do, we're just gonna do it right when we do it.
Well, I hope it works out for him. And on a technical note, when you were talking about the water line, the drainage line from across the road, I think it's a 36-inch drainage line from y'all talked about last month on the truck stop on water. You weren't here, but the rest of you were. Anyway, that runs between his two buildings. So that's coming. That main drainage from across the road on Sampley Street comes across and goes between his two buildings over there. So when he's over there digging up a place to plant a tree, I don't know about a water line. The water line comes down out on the roadside, and the natural gas is across the road. But that stormwater runoff line goes directly across there. And it's not mapped to my knowledge, but you can go on the back side of the property, which was the Joe Howard Marlowe, Ayers owns that back lot. You can go out there and see where it comes out.
No, but it's a drainage, because it's been dealt with sewer before, so
Okay.
it's been addressed.
Well, the sewer runs down the street.
Yeah, well, I know where
yeah.
it's, yeah,
Yeah.
and that issue with
But anyway, back on my thing here.
We're ready for you.
Okay. I'm asking for consideration to be allowed to build apartments and or condominiums on property I own on West Main. I have 7 lots down there. They're half-acre lots, and if I did the housing, which I think there's critical shortage of housing all over, but especially in Monteagle, you have people, now the rich folks are taking care of themselves. When I say a critical shortage of housing, I'm not worried about the people that's living in the gated communities, that's retired and bringing their 401k up and spending all the big bucks. That's fine. But what about the blue collar workers and the low income workers and people? They've been forced out of Monteagle, and this hasn't happened just on your watch. This has been happening over probably a 10-year period. And just like the R3 issue, it's ridiculous that you can't build a single family dwelling in an R3. That was never the intent, never. And it used to be whatever a C3 could have anything that, I mean, an R3 could have anything that an R1 or R2 could have. And actually the commercial used to do that. It used to say anything allowed, if you were talking about C2, it had the uses, and anything that was allowed in C1, which made sense. But anyway, back on my project, I bought that from Rogers Group when they got out of the ownership of Cliff Tops and sold all their lots. I bought the commercial lots and some interior lots, but interior lots are inside or outside the city limits, but in the jurisdiction of the regional planning. Excuse me. And then on the outside, they have restrictive covenants. They have their own setbacks that are more stringent than what the city's is. And then they actually amended their uses to allow for apartments and or condominiums. And then in your C2, you cannot have that. But in the past, where Monteagle Green is, that used to be in a residential zone. When they wanted to build the 72 units that's up there, for housing, the zoning was changed. I think it's now an R3 or whatever it is, I can't remember. Just like where the Armory is, that was in the residential zone. And so at the time, we didn't have to change the zoning on that because the town of Monteagle owned the property. We built the building and leased it to the state of Tennessee. But it was changed now. I think it's institutional or something, which is where it should be. If you build apartments in R3, like over, used to be Woodland Ridge, if you go over there and look, there's 24 units there. It's very unsafe with the traffic at the intersection, people pulling in and out. It's a nightmare. If that was on a main road, like Monteagle Green, you don't have that problem. It makes no sense to me, for anybody, whether it's me, you, or anyone else, to build 72 units on a side street in the town of Monteagle. And you go in lots of communities and you drive through, they have apartments and senior housing and 3, 4, 5-story housing in downtown, on the main thoroughfares of the business. It's everywhere. And you come to Monteagle and our ordinance says, oh, you can't do that. And to me, it makes no sense. As a property owner, I've got to decide a use for that property. Used to, the brick and mortar stuff was a pretty good thing. You could have retail shops and all that. But with the internet and stuff, it's kind of eliminated a lot of things that's going to happen. So, again, I can develop one little building times 7 and that's not gonna work out real good to me for as far as what it looks like, and cause or I can sell it to 7 different people, and then you're gonna have 7 entrances coming onto the main road. That doesn't make any sense to me. But right now, I can't build housing, which is already on the main road on the east end of town. And so I kind of want to see what the planning commission thinks about the concept of housing on a major road. And there may be bad points to that. I don't know of any that's happened at Monteagle Green. They've been up there probably 15 years now, probably.
So you're talking about 7 different entrances, are you planning on combining all this?
Yes, if I do something, I would combine those lots into probably 1, but no more than 2. Probably I'd do it in 2 different phases. But it would still be
What's your vision for, you know, what it's going to look like, that kind of thing? What's your vision?
Well, I've got to submit through Cliff Tops. They would have architectural control committee, and I've got to submit that to them, and I've got to deal with them on that. Now, I will say this, and I met with their manager, who's here tonight. They've kind of broken the mold on what they've allowed in those other lots down through there, as far as design, colors. I'm not going to build something that looks like what they've, the Pizza Hut colors, or the U-Hauls that's parked down there now. It'll look better than the U-Hauls, or the metal record service building that was put in there, and all those, whatever else. He can tell you what's been down there easier than I can. But you guys drive by it every day. But I guess the main thing is I've got to decide what direction I'm going to go in, and that's going to be dependent upon what the city, what your vision is, it's probably going to be different than what my vision is.
Well, I mean, not necessarily. So when you started the zoning for the Monteagle-Sewanee corridor, what did you have in mind?
Well, at the time, that would have been a C2, I think. We did C1 downtown, C2, which was on kind of each end. The C3, only C3 we had was out here. That was the catch-all. Anything that you didn't want in a C1 or a C2, you had to put it somewhere. So we put it in C3, whether it was the truck stop, or whether it was fireworks, or whether it was like the propane tank that's up here on Highway 56, or 41 now. That is a non-conforming use. That should have never been allowed to be there. And it was granted, just let them put it in. That's supposed to be in a C3 for safety.
It's done like 15, 20 years ago too, right?
Actually, it was done between 1988 and 1990.
That sounds like, anyway.
So what did you see as that corridor? What was your vision for that?
Well, we didn't have a vision. As it developed, we used to have uses permitted, and it listed all of them, uses prohibited, and then uses permitted on review. And then you would change those from time to time. And then really what's happened, I think more than anything, it's been, nearly 40 years. State planning came in and started telling us we had to go to these training sessions, that we didn't have, we needed to go and be trained on how to be planning commission members. And we went to those, and we used to go over to Crossroads. Stacy Morrison used to work for the state. I don't know if he still does or not, but we went to a church over there, and it was a great time and all that. But anyway, the state has slowly indoctrinated planning commissions to be on what the state sees as the vision, not what the people in the community, and you've been brainwashed into some of these things. When I say you, I'm talking about the planning commission, while I was on there, the ones that'll be here after you guys. And you have to be very careful. We've had planners before that would come up here, and they would be like one of the planning commission members. Instead of consult them and they'll give advice, you know, it was like we had to do everything that they recommended. And we had a little guy one time, his name was Wayne Knowles, was that his name, Debbie? Yeah, and he'd been with them for many, many years. But you know, he was the sixth member of the planning commission, and that's not how that's supposed to work. And so the vision for down there should be what the people that live here want, not what someone in planning in Chattanooga wants. And I think that answers your question, is what does the people that live here want?
Right, and I guess that's why I still want to ask that question. You, Dean Lay, what would you say would be a great use down that corridor?
Well, used to, it was going to be, even when Coolies came, like they bought silo property. Okay, they did. I've got all that somewhere. They bought silo property. They were going to have restaurants and retail shops there. And the deal was people that lived in Coolies was going to ride their golf cart. They were having paths up there, and they were going to come and utilize that, as well as it would be open to the public. Well, the dynamics have changed, and retail has changed dramatically. And so when you take away a lot of retail, you don't need professional offices. You know, what do you need? And you got to have a population to support whatever comes in. And everybody that comes and looks at Monteagle and to do feasibility analysis will come back, if it's a chain, say a restaurant or any kind of chain thing, they come back and say your population does not support us within whether it's a 10-mile radius or 15-mile radius. Peter can tell you more about that than I can. But I've had, over the years, I've had them come and contact me about property I had, and they do their feasibility study, and they come back and say, the numbers just aren't there. And so until we do something about housing, you're never going to have the numbers. And then you've got, and again, you know, the average working people are right now are priced out of Monteagle. And the trend is going, supposedly, some say the trend is going that a lot of people do not want to own homes. They want to be renters all their life. And right now, the city hall can tell you about people looking for houses to rent, or places to rent, and basically it's a house because there's not any apartments. And then the older people are wanting to downsize and get away. So I've looked at the condominium aspect of it, and I've looked at just the apartment rental of it, and I've actually looked at a portion of it, a segment of it being kind of not assisted living, but kind of in between assisted living and what just living there on their own. There would be some amenities that would be taken care of, and it would be done by third party. It would just be a menu type thing that they would subscribe to and pay based on what their needs were.
Well, I know when we created the link for the Mountain Goat Trail, the grant application, really what we were looking for was pedestrian traffic to go into downtown and to create, you know, foot traffic. And when I was reading the zoning ordinance, that's what apartments help do, is create that pedestrian traffic to businesses. So do you see, I mean, is that part of the thing that you're thinking of?
Well, I'm thinking primarily of housing. And that's going to be a spinoff if you've got people living out there able, that they can get on the goat trail and go wherever they want to go as soon as you get them across the interstate. Right now they can go to the Waffle House, and that's as far as they can go. But if you can get them across the interstate, I'm sure they'll come on into town.
Let me ask you this, because I know you and I talked about it, because you had mentioned that a while back. Since we don't have a real general plan that's never been adopted by any council, I mean, we had a plan, but it was never adopted through the proper channels, so legally. And one of the things, if you did develop some form of housing there, would you be willing to work with us not only with Cliff Tops, but you and I talked about the sidewalks and the lighting and the landscaping there, to where it would make it more accessible in that section? Would you be willing to?
Well, if you have a general plan that's being incorporated, that's gonna have a beginning and have an end to it, But for me, just say, yeah, I'll go down there and build sidewalks and put streetlights out, and you come by and I'm the only one sitting there with that doesn't make much sense to
No,
me.
but you might be the first one, and you build yours first before.
Well, and I would look at a commitment from the city and or someone else as a partnership
Yeah, that's what I'm
to
saying.
do that. But no, as far as saying, oh yeah, I'll put all this stuff in and build it and they will come.
So you're not willing to invest in that type of.
If there's a partnership with the city or someone, yes. But for me just to say, I'm gonna take it on my own to go down there and there's 700 feet of frontage there, approximate, that I'm gonna put in 700 feet of sidewalks and lighting for 700 feet, when you've actually got the goat trail across the road, there may need to be some discussion on that, but I would say I would have sidewalks, I envision having sidewalks inside my complex, when I say not only along the buildings, but depending on how the parking worked out, I've got to do I think it's a 75-foot setback from my front property line. So as far as a sidewalk out near the highway, depending on the topography on the site work, I don't have a problem with that. The lighting thing would have to be worked out and see how we would meter that and stuff, and how all that would work. And generally, as a city, y'all do a plan of services that you're supposed to provide all the citizens, whether it's street lights or roads or whatever it is, and if that's developing down there, I think the city's going to have to look at the street lighting obligation of the city if there's these people walking and or even on the goat trail and stuff.
Well, the goat trail you can after dark, that's a totally different thing. Those are closed after dark, but I'm talking making accessibility from business to business to area to area.
Well, from my place down to Pizza Hut and or Dollar General and all that stuff, they would come. I could see people walking. I can't see people walking up to Mountain Goat Trail Market to get a sandwich from the. But some may. I don't know. I'm just I'm not going to do that. I get the car and drive down there.
Well, I'm just saying, but you would say you would be without that plan being into place at this current time, because it's going to take time to put the general plan into place.
Oh yeah, I understand that.
But you might start developing.
If there's a commitment that there'll be a partnership.
With the town and with the corridor area.
Yeah. Yes.
So you're saying you would be willing
Yeah.
to do that?
That probably fall under that landscape.
Yeah.
And make sure you put a chain link fence.
Yeah, no chain link fence.
How many stories are you thinking? I know our max is like 3.
I'm limited to 2 stories in the restrictions from Clifton, and that's all I want.
Oh, okay.
And depending on whether it's condo or apartment, I prefer not to have the landings, but it kind of depends on the marketing on that thing. I still haven't spent the money for the initial first design and stuff. I'm kind of going this route. I'm trying to do all this stuff before the truck stop thing's a good lesson to learn from.
Amen.
And so I'm here just exploring the options and whether it'll be housing or whether it'll be, like I said, 7 little buildings down through there. I'll comply with what the ordinance is, whatever I do. And I've got to comply with Cliff Tops, the restrictive covenants at Cliff Tops. And I've met with them and made them, put them aware of what my initial plans are. I went to them first.
Are they receptive?
Well, they can speak for themselves.
Ty, are y'all receptive to this plan?
I think it's fair to say that we've been receptive to what we've presented so far.
Okay.
And your dad said on R3.
No, not really. Right now, in order to build housing, it would have to be changed. The sensible thing to me would be to put apartments and or condominiums in the C2 under review or all the way around. I mean, if you look at the C2, where would you not want an apartment or a condo?
Yeah, because, you want the C2, you don't want to be changing everything.
Right.
Everything around it is
Yeah,
C2.
everything around it is C2.
Yeah.
But C2 takes apartments but not condos, or what is it? C2 is,
I think it took either one.
Next to one.
It doesn't allow it.
No, it doesn't allow either one.
C doesn't allow, C1 is mixed use, I think.
Yes, you can put housing on the top floor.
Yeah.
And I could do that, but I don't really want to do that. I think the need is for the housing, and if you're gonna have housing on the second story, and I can see why they would want to do that in C1. If you've got a vibrant C1 and you've got, you know, people in offices and the things that are allowed in C1 and people knocking on your door to do that, I can understand. And you look at Nashville, you know, they're doing all sorts of things like that. But we're not Nashville, we're Monteagle. And we need housing.
Yeah, we do. I mean, we do.
And right now, if I want to build housing, apartments or condos, you look at your map and tell me where, for traffic and safety and marketing, where is there a good 3.5 acre tract in an R3? It's not there.
No.
And that's one reason, you know, you change uses and or zones. But at the time Monteagle Green came in, it was just spot zoned, changed, and of course that whole corridor has been a nightmare. You know, since it's been zoned, it's always whoever has a piece of property, it's in the wrong zone.
So if we were to rezone this piece of property that you're talking about, is that spot zoning?
Well, he would have to answer that. There's 7 lots there. You've done it in other places. It doesn't make sense to do it to me.
I would prefer to add, like we're doing in the R3, is to adding as opposed to rezoning.
So you said that you're not
Yeah.
100% sold on R3, is that what you said?
No, I don't think it makes any sense to change that down there to an R3 for that use. It just from a planning commission perspective,
It doesn't
to me,
make
it doesn't make any
sense.
sense.
Yeah.
Right, so what I'm hearing is, especially when we're considering revising R3, the uses permitted in R3, why wouldn't we consider revising uses in, excuse me, other zones?
I agree.
I mean, that's what I was looking at, R4. R4 allows for a variety of civic and commercial uses.
Yeah, but that's our commercial district, though. We don't want to.
Right, I'm just saying that.
Yeah.
But it may not be. You've got to think outside the box. If you look at that corridor through there, you have a lot of potential for that to develop over the next 10 or 15 years into housing.
Right.
And I'm talking about the multi-dwelling concept thing, and the market will dictate that.
And so will utilities.
Yeah. Well, but in 1988, 89, the administration came in and did a concept called the Village.
I remember.
And they spent thousands of dollars on this program thing and was looking at building a sewer line where the sewer line is now. But they never got any commitment from property owners. The city didn't. And so there was never any way they could come in and buy the property and do the Village concept. And so it was kind of like the truck stop thing, only it was in 1989 instead of 2021.
Right.
But you know, there's probably going to be mixed use demand for that. You're on the Monteagle Swanee. There's a lot of traffic there. There's a lot of people interested that have ties to Swanee that want to be up this way. They've come and bought houses in Monteagle, kind of like you know, for second homes or for their children that go to the university. And it's the same thing. The older folks all throughout the area said, "Dean, why don't you build something? We want to sell our house and we want to go into an apartment or a condo. We need to downsize, and we want to be in a safe area. We want to be close to the interstate. We want to be close to medical attention. We want all the things that everybody wants." Well, where is that location-wise? You know, it's not in. You know, it's really, to me, it's on that corridor.
It's a very important
That would
corridor.
be the second facet of it anyway, because you got the first facet of the corridor we have, and you've got the 2 lakes.
Yeah.
They go to Swanee, which that would be included as the bridge.
And my property is far enough down, I feel like, that you've got plenty of property on the Grundy side for commercial development. I'm not taking property away from commercial development. If you look at the availability of land through there, there's more available land from the bridge to the, I call those sand plant, the railroad tracks is what I call it. Of course, the city limits goes on down now. But there's more available land there with the gun farm, property that others own through there, Gene Nixon, Jim Myers. Smokehouse has a big tract. State of Tennessee owns 5 acres down there. They were originally gonna put the Welcome Center down there, and then where South Cumberland is, when that was the golf course and all that, when that foreclosed, the state ended up taking that and putting South Cumberland there. But anyway, there's plenty of property. Bobby Wiggins has got about 40 acres left, 40 or 50 acres left down there on the left. You got the White property before you get down to the other property. So there's and the gun property is 165 acres or thereabouts. So you've got well over 200 acres on that corridor that's available. And where else in the town of Monteagle do you have 200 acres? That's not the same owner, but you know, Mr. Nixon and I own about 85 acres out here, which is a large tract, but it's half the size of the gun farm.
So you're saying if we rezone this to residential, we wanna get a commitment from you to build those?
No, well, the cost right now of building materials has kind of, if I had to do it at today's cost of building materials, people couldn't afford to rent. But I'm anticipating that coming back down and leveling off, or the incomes are gonna jump up to take care of that. But it's gonna be, but I've still got to do, I've got to do preliminary engineering work, I've got to select the architect. I mean, I'm a year away on a fast track of being able to be here probably with a site plan and the plans submit, have to go through the building inspector, and they'll have to meet and talk and make sure we're all on the same page. I mean, this isn't something that's going to start tomorrow. I mean, this is, I'm thinking a year from now would be a fast track for that, because I'm not going to do what they've done over here.
But so what you're saying, if we actually C2 was rewritten per review,
Use on review.
use on review for multifamily use, just like you made the recommendation for the other one to be reversed, then that could be considered.
That would
So
make
we
more
just have
sense.
to change the ordinance, and that would imply to bidding.
But that makes more sense to me. I mean,
And it would still
yeah.
leave.
That makes a
you know,
lot
it doesn't
more
make
room.
sense than it just,
That was a great presentation, Dean.
well, we shall see.
But no, it's just, but we do know, we're cleaning up a lot of years. is
Here,
what
the
we're doing.
surrounding property is all commercial.
Yeah.
Why would we stop with just that? We're gonna change this to residential.
Well, I don't think we change it, we just not change the language in C2 that could be looked further.
Yeah.
Or else it's too
Language
much.
will change to use on review in commercial, and the use on review would be,
Yeah. That makes sense, because we do need housing for sure.
As opposed to C3 mixed use.
Right.
C1 is mixed use.
Yeah, and that
It's
way-
not even allowed in C3.
No, and you're not messing with totally rezoning it, we're changing the ordinance.
I will not rezone.
See, I like that idea, not.
It makes more sense to do that, and also,
Right, but people want to live in commercial zones now. You know, we're used to, that was taboo. But people, you know, you go in bigger communities, you see that it's very attractive, and they pay high end to live in a C1. Now, Monteagle's not there, but you know, you drive on the road from Monteagle to Swanee, and there's vast property, and if you really want to see growth, that's going to be one of the big areas. But it's not going to be fast food or things where people want to be close to the interstate. And my property, I've had that probably 35 years, I guess, thereabouts. Ty can tell us when the exact year that Rogers got out. 88. So they had the auction in probably 89.
Well, Dean, the only challenge with taking out of commercial is, income. We would have to almost revisit our income structure.
Yeah. Well, I would say I would probably contribute as much probably as the U-Haul lot does and the chain link fence lot does now. I would say it would be a close something close to that.
But you're not taking out a commercial, and they're not making a recommendation.
Right, but I mean, if the whole corridor.
Yeah, if everything went that way.
Yeah, if everyone went that way.
But if commercial's not coming, you've got to adapt.
You gotta revisit your income.
And that's the thing when you talk about vision. Your vision should be what changes. You know, our vision is in 20 years we're going to be up with what the people want.
Sure.
And it may be right now. I think we, meaning the town of Monteagle, are lagging a little bit through the problems that come to the planning commission. You know, when you start having all these little problems like this, and you're always going to have them, but the critical housing is not a little problem. You know, you've got homelessness in Monteagle.
Yeah.
Now, you know, I'm not going to solve that. I'm not claiming to. But that, you know, who would have thought in 1983 that in 2021 we would have homeless population in the town of Monteagle? You know, so, you know, I didn't have that vision. I don't know if anyone else did, but I did not. Okay?
Right.
But it's here and it has to be dealt with.
Right.
I think another thing to be considered, it might work, if multifamily goes in places like that, it could bring commercial with it.
Yeah.
It would, because you would have foot traffic then.
Get fast food's coming right there
Yeah.
next to it.
Well, when you get to a certain population, then it becomes feasible for them to come in the community.
That makes sense. All right, any questions for Dean?
So you guys will just study this, kind of, and
I like what you had
bounce
to
it
say.
about.
I like what you had to say.
I just think if this is something we really need to pursue, you know, maybe next week, this is something we need to start working on and changing the language to where,
Upon review.
upon review for both of these.
That opens up
Yeah.
the category.
Okay.
And that way, the process will take a while, it won't happen overnight, but at least we can, you know, this is something, Richard, next week in time,
You never know, Dean might.
that we need to actually look at those things as soon as we can.
Thank you, Dean.
Have you looked at the roundabout yet?
Pardon?
Have you looked at the roundabout yet?
We need something.
Yeah, well, we're still, but that's on the next, right now, those guys are, big gals, they're really working through the, fixing these things that are more custom to Monteagle.
Well, that's a safety issue.
It is a
Oh,
safety
yeah,
issue.
we are looking, but give us a few weeks anyway.
A few weeks, okay,
Yeah, would you
so
like to come and help us?
before the end of the year?
Actually, we are planning on doing it before the end of the year. So.
Good deal. Yeah, I mean, it's a safety thing. I see, you know, and you go to other places and I've been on roundabouts and get lost on the roundabout in the beginning.
He hated the roundabout in the beginning as well as the rest of it.
Where's the roundabout?
Down by 41,
It's-
the interstate. Look, right there.
Well, anyway, Dean, any questions for us?
Well, just, now I'm on the roundabout thing. I mean, it's needed, I think, and people, and it's very controversial when you do it. I mean, people are gonna
It was
come
on
in
the
here and
20
crawl on you.
It was on the 2020 plan.
My planes were controversial. We
Yeah.
went down the mountain goat, didn't you remember?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so, but it's, they're widely accepted. I'm going to South Georgia tomorrow, and I go through a little town, that's not as big as Monteagle, and there's actually 2 or 3 of them there, and one of them has a roundabout now, and where it did have a red light. And people say, oh, tractor trailers can't get around. Every time I pull up there, just about there's a tractor trailer coming, and they go around the roundabout, and they make their turn, and it's safe. It speeds up traffic flows, and you know, I think it's time for Monteagle to look at that and see if it would fit us.
Totally
So,
agree.
anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dean, for your time. Appreciate it. All right, Southern Tire Mart. All right, so you get to have a whole discussion on the focus of Monteagle in the future.
Thank you. My name is Zach Dufour. I'm a civil engineer with Kimley Horn, filling in for some sick folks that were here last month, sorry. Understand the condition of approval for the access in the rear of the property. I've got some copies on. Do you want me to hand these out? Is that okay?
We got him.
Oh, you do? Okay. So what we've done in coordination with staff is we have added a gate, a mechanical gate, in between the landscaping on that access drive. So the owner wants to be able to still maintain access to the rear of the property. With the grade differential, there's really no way to get down there from from the parking lot. But it'll remain closed at all times and only be able to be opened by the owner for access for maintenance. Nobody from the general public will be able to use that access road. I did bring a few pictures just to kind of show what we've spec'd and what it would look like.
Yeah, that is cute.
And that is, there is a detail and a specification in our plans now that specs that level of.
How is it controlled? How is it,
It'll have like essentially a garage door opener that opens it, but it's electric. And it'll 6 feet tall, and it'll essentially slide behind the landscape buffer there along the property line.
Garrett, does that?
Gary, do you want to say this?
where's the width of it?
That's a good question. It is, yeah, I mean, it's drawn to go essentially from where the landscape buffer on both sides of that access drive, and so it'll overlap that landscape buffer by a few feet on each side, so there wouldn't be any way for somebody to drive around it.
I mean, it looks like a more than a 2-lane road, so that's what's gonna be used just for access and egress of the owner?
That's right.
Any questions, commissioners?
Is 6 foot tall enough here?
Sorry, I did just see it's a 22-foot wide gate opening.
Which is the width of the road.
Is that type of gate approved?
That's what I was thinking, that's the take. So would you agree that this is some sort of security fence for that portion of the property, just so we can specify the 10 feet?
Or is it a screening?
Just so that it meets one of the 4 fencing classifications for the security for rear access.
If that's allowed, then sure.
And that's its only use, is for access and egress from the owner.
That's right. Yep.
So,
Yeah, it'll be closed at all times. It'll only be open to allow maintenance vehicles back there to access the rear of the property.
You're not gonna be parking any vehicles back there.
Nope.
So the first section, this fence under security fence is the primary purpose of the security fence is to restrict access to a structure or area of property. That's what I said.
Sure.
Therefore, we can use that specific language stating that it has to be between 6 and 10 feet. And it says opacity, because that was discussed earlier. Opacity requirements shall be determined by the planning commission based upon safety considerations and the need to screen the interior area. So it's at your discretion.
is that stated in here?
Yeah, that's at your discretion whether that rendering needs that requirement.
Well, it's not like you can
It's
put
not stating
links.
its use, it's just a picture of it. So I'm content with all. Yeah.
But that's just regarding opacity, right?
It's just something on here that shows it's.
And it's not a chain link fence.
No.
This is not even showing the width.
So I guess the only question is, it's see-through.
Yeah, does it need to be dense?
No, there's no screening or anything.
It's a security.
I was just trying to use that specific fencing classification so that I can answer your questions if it needs that height. Which we currently does. I don't think the opacity is.
Well, see, my thing is it's gonna be back there storing tires and whatnot, and we're gonna be able to see through that.
There's such a great difference. I mean, I don't think you'll be able to see, because you're at least 10 feet, the road is at least 10 feet from the building, 10 feet lower than where the building is
lower than where the tire's gonna sit, so all you gotta do is look up.
Well,
I'm just asking.
you're gonna see a hillside if you look straight from the road. I don't think you'll see it. All the tires are stored inside. There's no outdoor storage.
No outdoor storage.
Yeah, it's gonna be in something.
I would still rather see it
There,
Is this fence, is this gate tying into a cyclone fence?
no.
Where's the cyclone fence that's on your drawings? Where, on the back of the property?
There's a landscape buffer around that backside of the
I'm
property.
seeing a drawing, I don't see the drawing number on here, but I'm seeing the chain link double swing gate and chain link fence on,
That's a screen fence stuff.
Which sheet are you looking at?
I can barely see this. C600?
This is L like
Because I didn't think you had a fence at the back.
What they
Just
have
get
is
landscape.
that they just have
Just
this,
landscape.
this right here. It's this stuff, that's it.
The one I was gonna do, just say landscape.
Right, but I'm seeing this on C600. I'm just trying to figure out where it is.
Yeah, I'm looking. Bear with me.
Says it's an 8-foot fence with a security with barbed wire on top.
Oh, hey.
Or either it's 6 with 2 foot of barbed wire.
That just looks, to me, this looks like a little gate. It says.
Yeah, I don't see the chain link called out anywhere on the plans, unless that was removed and we just didn't take that detail out of the plans. But I don't see a chain link fence anywhere called out on the plans to be installed.
There's nothing existing, is there?
On the west side is the storage facility. It goes all the way to the back.
Yeah, I don't see a fence
Yes,
on,
Jay.
on this preliminary. The L100.
That's the landscape, yeah, that's the landscaping plan.
Okay.
Yeah, here's that gate, putting in this, that's the gate.
And it's just a gate
Yeah.
to nowhere. It's just a gate blocking the road.
Right.
Which one are you
I'm trying to find.
referring to? Which one are you referring to?
Ma'am?
Which one are you referring to?
C6-00.
Okay.
It's over three ahead of it.
Zero one.
That's it right
there's
there.
not,
Yep.
there's not a fence between the truck stop and the tire store, right?
No.
Because
Yeah,
it's
I
coming in
apologize for that. I
from
think
the road
those,
back out
I
there.
think those details on that C6, that sheet C6 are leftover details.
The six,
Radius, parking.
So they were taken out?
30, with the
Yeah, they're,
60-inch radius parking coverage, parking coverage. And then existing tree and the gravel.
You think it's just in here?
I don't remember seeing it on the site plan. Do you have the site plan here that we approved?
from last month.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, it's my understanding the only change was this gate
It was the only change.
at the access road.
But I don't remember a fence in it.
It isn't drawn in on any of it.
You remove that from the HC6?
Is that what you just,
It's not showing.
that's it, I'll just say not used, yeah.
Here's last month's.
It seems like an easy fix.
Just take out that one.
Yeah, just like last month, we approved a condition on that section that doesn't apply to any correction site plan and right after we removed.
You find it, Earl? Okay. All right, so let's, while we're looking, I know I did not see a fence on the site plan that we approved. If it's not on there, commissioners, what do you feel about this solution? Well, Drain, you've never been quiet before, go ahead.
If it's not on the site plan, further changes settings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And last month was approved, all we got to approve now is the gate, right?
Because one of the stipulations was that it was closed off.
It would be closed off.
And it was
Right.
just gonna have
But
the
we
landscaping.
had it last month on no changes there.
That is correct.
Now, the only revision they have is the gate.
That is correct.
So what are we,
They want it to remain open for
I know,
maintenance.
but are we debating on whether or not to put the chain link fence up?
No,
Or are we
no, that's off the
I think
table.
so.
Okay.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah, we're not proposing
skip the chain link,
fence.
we've got chain link fence on our brain.
All
Skip
we're
it up.
worried about is this gate.
Yes, that's all we're worried about is the gate.
I'm okay with the gate, but I think it needs to be solid. I don't think you'll be able to see it. Just my opinion.
Okay, commissioners, any feedback on that? Is that a possibility, sir?
So, I know this does differ a
When
little
you're
bit
at
from,
the road and you're 10 feet below the building, you're not gonna see anything but the bank.
That's right, when you drive by it, you see that.
I go to dump a lot, so,
Yeah, you're not gonna see anything.
I don't know.
I know this differs a little bit from the sample picture that I provided, but there is a note on that sheet that shows the gate that says there's a safety mesh supplied, but it's not shown on this detail because it would just look like a black rectangle. So behind that metal gate, there will be like a black mesh fabric that goes all the way across
Oh.
that.
Oh, well then that
So
solves that.
it won't be completely see-through, but it will help a lot more than what you see in that photograph there.
Provide minimal
Minimal, what was that word? All right. Does it meet the requirements?
Well, the gate, before we had landscaping, and we were satisfied that the landscaping was kind of high. Now you've got a 22 plus foot opening.
When the landscaping was gonna go all the way through, you mean?
When the landscaping was gonna go all the way through.
Right.
So I understand what Dory is saying. Now we've got a 22 open gap that's not gonna be, when it's closed, it was gonna probably just grow up and not be used and it was just be there. So
Right. And that, yeah,
there's a
that,
house right there, right there across the street, pretty close.
Right, I like
How
that.
tall are the trees that are gonna be directly adjacent to the fence?
hang on just a second, I'll tell you.
As much as we have.
They are, there's, eastern red cedars proposed that,
They're not complaining, so I don't think it'll do anything.
going in will be
What
6 to 8
I'm
feet
worried about
tall.
here is that this,
Same height of the fence.
and this is
Maybe a little taller.
not the thing, but this, what happens is if the trees die here, are they gonna keep putting them up? Because then you can just go around it.
I think, no, but you hope a big concrete truck doesn't go around it, or somebody needs to tire that man. But they could, you're right, unless the landscaping is right too.
You have to keep the landscape.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have to keep the landscaping up
Sure.
because,
Right. That's what they signed the landscaping guarantee.
I mean, it's gonna have to be kept up.
So if you have a problem with it being solid.
And the landscape
I have no problem with it being a solid
Distance,
dirt.
was it 8 foot, 10 foot spacing?
for the trees,
We didn't do them. We can do that
I thought
without.
we had some landscape requirement, I don't remember what it was in your deal on landscaping, how far was it apart?
That was in the other, with the other two.
Yeah, I mean, that, you can see on the plan, they'll essentially be touching one another, you know, each side, and that they're being planted at 6 to 8 feet tall trees. So I mean, they're fairly sizable trees going in, and then obviously
17-inch wide landscape.
17 feet wide.
17 feet.
So that access, is that important for you?
Yeah, to the owners, yeah, absolutely. If you continue that landscape buffer all the way through, that cuts off their access, and it's an existing entry point to the property, and there's really no way for them to get any sort of equipment back there to take care of the rest of their property from the parking lot, because you're.
Well, I mean, the trucks that are coming in there to be serviced, obviously can get there through the front, so.
Oh, yeah, no, we're not talking about accessing the parking area or the store or anything from this back. It won't be anything like that, because there'd be no way for them to get up there. They'd be driving up a 10-foot, right, it'd be taking a mower back there or something just to clean up the back of the property.
This part.
I would like to see the gate have some kind of screening on it so that you couldn't see anything. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm okay with the gate. So do I need to make a motion?
Well, before you do that, I know Southern Tire is not, it's leased out from Pollock, but since my husband is a general manager, I'm gonna approve myself, I'm not gonna vote on this. And so, I just feel like it's best, since he's the manager there.
All right, Commissioners, Richard, Peter, Reed.
Did you make a motion?
I'm gonna make a motion that we approve the gate.
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries.
Approve the gate would be,
I would like to see some screening on it, yes. Not,
so we need to make it,
Nope.
do it again?
Do it again.
okay, I wanna make a motion that we approve the gate with some kind of screening on it so that you can all see through it.
How does that define?
Or
Can't see through it at all?
60, 40, what?
What kind of opacity do you want, Doreen?
Well, I mean,
Do you not want to be able to see it all, or some, or?
Well, like I said, it's got that screen mesh on it. I mean,
if it's got that, then I'm okay with that. I'm not okay with it.
sure, understand. I think that'll be a big difference.
Agreed?
If you put that in the motion, I'll agree with it.
But before you, I do want to ask a question to clarify, this is meeting your requirements, they're not changing anything? I'm not voting, I've already said that, but I want to make sure we're not doing anything,
Right, from what I've seen, nothing else has changed except for this gate.
and this meets requirements as the ordinance reads, right?
So what percentage is it that this mesh has got on it?
What opacity does it have, sir?
I mean, you're asking me how much I want, I'm asking you how much is there.
You see sunlight.
You can see sunlight through it, sure, yeah.
Okay, well, that's in the motion. You can say something like that.
I understood, and I can second that.
I recommend make a motion to approve the entire site plan, not just the gate.
Just meet the new site plan.
Did we
I'll
not
make a
already,
motion to
did we
approve
not
the
already
new
do that?
site plan.
I need a second.
Site plan does have that note in there for the screen mesh.
Plan does not have what you want.
So see, Garrett, you're gonna get me in trouble. The site plan doesn't have the gate on it.
It's got the gate on it. It's got the gate
Yes,
and the
it
mesh.
does.
It has this
It
gate.
doesn't have the
It
mesh
does,
on it. I'm
it's the
sorry.
mesh as an addition.
That's just a model example, right?
Right. There's a specific note on this detail, the construction drawing detail for that fence. I probably shouldn't have even shown
And
that.
what does the note say so we can,
Safety mesh supplied, but not shown for clarity. It's not shown on this detail. It's not drawn on the detail because it would, like I said before, it wouldn't be able to see the slats in the fence. But there's a note that said safety mesh is supplied.
So a proper motion would be approving the site plan with the gate showing the mesh screen
The mesh screening on it.
that's on page C6.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the site plan with the gate, with the screening mesh on it.
Sounds like a pretty
Janet, did you get that?
Yes.
Okay. Need a
Second.
okay, there we go. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? We're getting a little slap happy. Dean got us all fired up. All right,
Thank you.
you're very welcome. Thank you.
Do we submit anything back?
But it is worth noting that.
Yeah, I want to just say I have.
Worth noting what?
All of that.
That the item, back up the agenda.
Thank
The
you
item
so
B
much.
under new business was withdrawn by the applicant.
That's right.
That's worth noting.
All right,
On the applicant, what's in?
that was West Main Street.
Right, Bray Banks sent it in on behalf of Mr. Atkinson. Mr. Banks is one who was here on January 29th.
And that has been removed. Okay. Any properly presented new business? All right, then I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Woo! I need a second?
Second.
All those in favor?